If the A comes first in the ratio, because that A colon B and the A over B, those are the same ratios. We say A to B, so if the A comes first, the A goes in the numerator, the B goes in the denominator, okay? And then we could actually write out the word to. We could say A to B, or we could actually write out the division sign, A divided by B, which is not really ever used, but just know that you can use that. Okay? So a big part of today is going to be simplifying ratios. Okay, so we're going to write a little bit about how to simplify ratios. So if I want to simplify a ratio, no matter what form it's in, whether it's in the A colon B, A over B, A to B, A divided by B, first thing we're going to do is we're going to write it in that second form. We're going to write it as a fraction. Because simplifying fractions is not a new concept to us. So once it's written as a fraction, then we're going to divide out any common factors. So sometimes it'll already be written as a fraction. Other times we're going to have to write it as a fraction. And once it's written as a fraction, then we can simplify it exactly like you normally simplify fractions. Okay? So let's look at some examples. Factors. Okay, number 1. I want to simplify the ratio 24t to 26t. 24t to 26t. Okay? Now remember, this ratio written like this means the same thing as 24t over 26t. Means the exact same thing. Once again, notice that the 24t comes first, so it's going to go in the numerator. And now, you don't even have to think about it as a ratio. Think about it just as a fraction. What are some things you could divide out that the numerator and denominator have in common? A 2, right? I could divide out a 2. The 24 turns into a 12. The 26 turns into a 13. Do they have anything else in common? A t. I could divide out those t's, right? So your simplified ratio would be 12 to 13. You can leave your answer like this. If you really want to write it back in the form that it was given to you, you can, but you do not have to. Okay? Questions so far? Honestly, a big part of today is simplifying fractions. Okay? That's the majority of what today is. Okay, let's try 45x to 30x. Okay, once again, this means the same thing as 45x over 30x. Okay, well, looking at my numerator and denominator, what are some things I could divide out? 15. You could divide out a 5, and then you'd have to divide out a 3. But if we divide out a 15, the 45 turns into a 3. The 30 turns into a 2. What else can I divide out? An x. The x's divide out. So your simplified ratio is 3 to 2. Okay, now, I think I already know what you're going to ask. A lot of times I tell you, okay, well, this is an improper fraction. So you guys are always really tempted because it's been drilled into you that we don't like improper fractions. You have to change it to a mixed number. So if we were to change this into a mixed number, it would be 1 and 1/2. Okay, but I'm simplifying ratios. My answer should be a ratio. This is a ratio, a comparison of two numbers. I'm comparing 3 and 2. Is 1 and 1/2 a ratio? No, because I'm not comparing two numbers, right? It'd be 1 and 1 to right? It's not. It's not a ratio. So today, good news, you don't have to do that extra step. Even if you want to, you can't because it's not a ratio. Mixed numbers are not ratios. Okay, so you have to leave them as an improper fraction. Make sense? Okay, let's try some more. Number 3. 32 a to the 4th to 24a squared. Okay, well, this one's kind of nice because it's already written as a fraction for us, so we don't have to change it into a fraction. So this is exactly like what we did back in chapter 4, I think. Do the exact same thing. Look at your numbers. What can you divide out of both of those numbers? An 8. The 32 turns into a 4. The 24 turns into a 3. Now look at your A's. Let's go back to what we did in chapter 4. I have 4 A's being multiplied together in the numerator. I have 2 being multiplied in the denominator. How many of these will cancel out? 2. How many are left?
2.
Where are they at? The numerator, right? So we're going to put an A squared in the numerator. So 4A squared, 2, 3 would be my answer. That's if you are adding. If you're adding like terms. So that's a good question. Right? We're multiplying, so they just cancel out. Just like how I could divide out an 8, I can cancel out an 8 from both of these. I can cancel out the A's because it's all multiplication. If there was an addition there, I couldn't do it. Okay, make sense? Okay, last one of these. Number 4. I want you guys to try this one on your own. 63 r squared s squared 2 81 r s to the 4th. Okay, what did we get for our answer when we simplified this? 7r over 9s squared. Anybody not get that? Not know why? Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, what was your question?
I don't know where the r and the other is.
Okay, no, this is a good question. So, did everybody get the 7 over 9 okay? Okay, so we won't worry about the 7 and the 9. Let's look just at the r's, okay? So this r squared, remember that means r times r. I have this in the numerator, 2 r's being multiplied in the numerator. I just have one of those in the denominator. Out of these r's, how many cancels out? 1 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator. Those are gone. How many are you left with?
1.
Where's it at? Numerator. Okay, the s's, I have 2 s's in the numerator, 4 in the denominator. How many of these could cancel out? 2, right? 2 in the numerator, 2 in the denominator. How many are you left with?
2.
Where are they at?
Denominator.
Make sense? Okay, yes.
It doesn't change the, I'm losing my memory. It doesn't matter if we put, r to the first or anything, right?
You could. If you wanted to put r to the first, you can because it means the same thing. If you don't put an r to the first, it's implied that it's a 1. Kind of like if we had just an x, we assume that there's a 1 in front of there. We assume that there's a 1. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions over these ones? Okay, this I think is the easier part of the section because it's stuff that we've kind of already done. We did this back in chapter 4. I know it's been a while. The next part, it will be new, okay, because we're still going to be simplifying ratios, but we're going to be simplifying ratios that have units, so feet and kilometers and centimeters and hours and days and all of this stuff. So the first thing that I want to do, maybe in the margin of your page, we're going to write down some conversions, okay?
Oh, conversion.
Right, some conversions that, okay? So, I'm going to write down any and all conversions that you could possibly need for your homework. That way you have them. So let's start out with, let's go from 1 week. How many days are in 1 week? 7, right? 1 week equals 7 days, okay? Well, now let's go from 1 day. How many hours? 24. Okay, these ones aren't too bad, right? And then in 1 hour, how many minutes? 60. And then if we want to go further, in 1 minute, there are how many seconds? 60. Okay, everybody knows those ones. Those ones aren't too bad. Let's do, what about 1 foot? There are how many inches? 12. That's really the only one in that little section there. I guess we could do in 1 yard. How many feet?
3.
3 feet in a yard. I don't think you'll need those today, but just in case you ever do. Let's do the tricky ones, okay? What if I start with kilometers? In 1 kilometer, what's the unit just smaller than a kilometer? A meter. How many meters? 1,000. Very good. There are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So then if I go from meters, what's the next step there? Centimeters. How many centimeters are in a meter? 100. Okay, I believe those are, oh, well, we could do, what if I go from kilograms to grams? 1,000. Kilo means 1,000. Okay, these are the only sets, and you may not even need all of them for your homework, but you may have to use these, okay? So that way you have them written down. If you forget them, then you can look at them, okay? Questions over any of these? Okay, so we are going to have some ratios that do not have the same units. So we're going to write some directions here. So to simplify ratios with different units, we have to do 2 things. So if I'm talking about a ratio, days to hours, I can't really compare the 2 because they're completely different units. So the first thing I have to do is I have to express them using the same unit. And we'll talk about how to do that. Once I have them in the same unit, so maybe both of my units are all in days or they're all in hours, then I can write and simplify my ratio. Okay, so instead of trying to explain all this, we're just going to talk through an example to use these. And I have 6 of these, so we'll get hopefully a lot of practice. So let's say I have the ratio 45 minutes to 3 hours. So basically what this means, let's say I have a task to do. And one person, it's going to take 45 minutes. The other one, it's going to take 3 hours. Now, obviously, you know the person who can do the task in 45 minutes works a lot faster. But if I want to know just how much faster they work, I can't really compare the 2 because I have minutes and I have hours. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and write this as a fraction. So I have 45 minutes over 3 hours. And what I have to do is I have to make sure they are in the same unit. Okay, so you can do this one of 2 ways. I am going to do every single one of these examples the easy way. Hopefully you guys will choose to do your homework the same way. You could change either minutes to hours or hours to minutes. You should get the same answer. The easy way to do this is to take your larger unit, change it into the smaller unit. Because when you do that, you will always multiply. If you go from the smaller unit to the larger unit, you're going to have to divide. And we know that when you divide, sometimes you don't end up with nice, easy numbers. Okay? So we are always going to take the larger unit, change it to the smaller unit. So between minutes and hours, which one's my larger unit? Hours. So this minutes here, the 45 minutes, it's going to stay 45 minutes. Okay? But this hours, I need to change that to minutes. I need to figure out how many minutes are in 3 hours. So this is really easy. How many minutes are in 1 hour? 60. So that conversion that you have, you're going to multiply by that number. 3 times 60 gives you 180. So what this tells me is that this task that takes the first person 45 minutes to do, it's going to take the second person 180 minutes to do, which is a little more useful. But if I have a ratio that looks like 45 over 180, is that simplified? we do want to go ahead and simplify these. So if I divide out, I actually think you can divide out of 45, and you get 1 to 4. So this is a little more meaningful. I knew that the 3-hour person works a lot slower, but you know what this tells me? This person works 4 times slower than the first one, which is a lot slower. So you definitely want to hire the first person, right? Okay. All right, let's try another one. Let's try 5 days to 18 hours. So this time, let's say we're talking about a trip, and you're deciding what trip you want to take. One of them takes 5 days to drive. One of them takes 18 hours to drive. I guess you're probably looking at what you're doing on this trip. Okay, so we have 5 days over 18 hours. I need to change them to the same unit. So take your larger unit, change it to the smaller one. What is my larger unit here? The days. So that 18 hours stays 18 hours. So I need to change days into hours. How many hours are in a day? 24. So 5 times 24 gives me 120. So now my ratio that I need to simplify is 120 over 18. What can you divide out of both of those? A 2, and you get 60 over 9. What can you divide out of both of those? A 3, and you get 20 to 3. Okay, now another thing, once you simplify your ratio, you don't have to include, once you have them in the same unit, you don't have to include units. Because it doesn't matter if I'm talking about minutes or hours or seconds. For every 20 minutes of this trip, it would only take 3 minutes of this trip. Okay? Or for every 20 hours of this trip, it would only take this one 3 hours. Okay, so you don't have to include the units. If you want to, you can, but you don't need to. Okay? Is this making sense? Okay, so let's try number 7. We have 9 inches to 5 feet. 9 inches to 5 feet. Okay, take the larger unit, change it into the smaller one. Which is my larger unit here? Feet. So the 9 inches stay the same. I need to change feet into inches. How many inches in a foot? 12. 5 times 12 gives me 60. So now I need to simplify 9 over 60. What can you divide out of both 9 and 60? A 3. And you get 3 to 20. So really not super hard, just kind of new, right? Haven't done these before. Okay, let's try, we'll do one more together, and then I'll have you try the last ones together. Okay, so this one, let's try 320 centimeters to 2 kilometers. 320 centimeters to 2 kilometers. Okay, which unit will I change here? Kilometers, because it's a lot bigger, right? Okay, now, off the top of your head, is there a direct conversion from kilometers to centimeters? No, there's a step in between there, right? What is it? Meters. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave the centimeters the same. But instead of changing kilometers to centimeters right away, we're going to change kilometers to meters first. Okay? So how many meters are in a kilometer? 1,000. So now I have 320 centimeters to 2,000 meters. And then, once again, the centimeter stays the same. And then I can change the meters to centimeters by multiplying by what? 100, which basically means just adding 2 zeros. So I have 320 centimeters to 200,000 centimeters. So I can divide out of 10. Now I need to simplify 32 over 20,000. What can you divide out of both of those? 2. A 2. And we get 16 over 10,000. What can you divide out of both 16 and 10,000? Another 2, right? Okay, so go ahead and divide out at 2. And I'll get this back up in a second. And you get 8 over 5,000. What can you divide out of both 8 and 5,000? Another 2, right? And we get 4 over 2,500. Okay, making sure I didn't have too many zeros there. Okay, we're almost done. What can you divide out of both 4 and 2,500? Another 2, and we get 1,250. And then what can you divide out of both 2 and 1,250? A 2. And you get, I believe, 625. So if you divided by anything other than a 2, maybe by 4 every now and then, it would have cut down your work a little bit. But you'll get there in the end. Okay, questions on that one? Okay, I'm going to write 2 on the board. I want you guys to try these 2 on your own. These will be the last 2. Number 9, I want you to simplify 150 grams to 3 kilograms. And then this will be like the last one we just did. 5 kilometers to 450 centimeters.